Welcome to the Restricted Handling Daily Intel Brief. Let's dig in. Here's what's been going on in Russia in the last 24 hours. President Volodymyr Zelensky's decision to remove Defense Minister Mykhailo Fedorov has created one of the most significant domestic challenges of the war. Fedorov was not simply a defense bureaucrat. He became the face of Ukraine's push toward a new style of warfare built around drones, artificial intelligence, digital systems, and rapid battlefield adaptation. At only 35 years old, Fedorov represented the younger generation of Ukrainian officials who believe Ukraine's best path against Russia is to out-innovate Moscow. His argument has been that Ukraine does not need to match Russia tank for tank or soldier for soldier. It needs to move faster, build cheaper systems, and constantly adjust. That vision put him in conflict with Ukraine's traditional military leadership, especially Commander-in-Chief General Alexander Syrsky. After his dismissal, Fedorov publicly accused the military establishment of blocking reforms and relying too heavily on old approaches. He argued that Ukraine cannot defeat Russia by copying the same systems and structures that Moscow uses. That public split has become a major political test for Zelensky. More than 1,000 people protested in Kyiv, and demonstrations also appeared in cities including Kharkiv, Lviv, and Odessa. These were unusual scenes for wartime Ukraine, especially because the criticism was not coming from pro-Russian political forces, but from Ukrainians worried that the country could lose one of its biggest advantages, innovation. Zelensky responded by naming Yevhenii Khmara, the acting head of Ukraine's security service, as interim defense minister. That appointment is an interesting signal. Khmara comes from the intelligence and special operations world. He previously led the SBU's Alpha unit and was involved in some of Ukraine's most important operations, including the defense of Kyiv and the campaigns surrounding Snake Island. The choice suggests Ukraine wants to preserve the technology and intelligence-driven approach that Fedorov championed, while bringing in someone with deeper security experience. The question now is whether Kyiv can maintain unity between its military commanders, political leadership, and defense innovators at a critical stage of the war. And this comes at a moment when Ukraine is trying to show allies that its approach is working. During his final visit to Kyiv as Prime Minister, Keir Starmer pledged that British support for Ukraine would continue even after political leadership changes in London. Starmer announced approximately €300 million in funding tied to Ukraine's future acquisition of 16 Swedish Gripen fighter aircraft. The aircraft will not change the battlefield tomorrow, but the message is important. Britain is signaling that support for Ukraine is a long-term strategic commitment, not simply a policy tied to one administration. Starmer also highlighted what has become one of the defining lessons of this war. Modern conflict is increasingly determined by adaptation. Ukraine has shown that a smaller military can challenge a larger opponent by combining technology, intelligence, and speed. That experience is now becoming a strategic export. Ukraine is increasingly sharing its battlefield knowledge with partners around the world. Countries that have watched drone warfare reshape conflicts are looking to Kyiv for lessons on everything from counter-drone systems to production methods. Ukraine's defense companies are developing new technologies based on direct battlefield feedback. One example is the Kyiv or Predator system developed by U-Force. The system combines advanced sensors, tracking technology, and automated targeting assistance designed to help counter enemy drones. The larger lesson Ukraine is pushing to allies is that traditional defense timelines are too slow. Building a new capability over 5 or 10 years may not be enough in a world where a battlefield problem can emerge and evolve within weeks. Russia is experiencing that challenge firsthand. Ukraine's campaign against Russian infrastructure continues to focus less on individual targets and more on the broader systems that sustain Moscow's war effort. The goal is to create pressure across logistics, energy, transportation, and military support networks. The most significant area is the Black Sea and Sea of Azov. Ukrainian forces have expanded attacks against Russian vessels, including ships connected to Russia's oil trade and logistics network. The purpose is not simply to damage ships. It is to make Crimea harder and more expensive for Russia to support. For years, Crimea was treated by Moscow as a protected strategic hub. Ukraine is now trying to change that calculation by targeting the routes that keep the peninsula supplied. The campaign is also exposing weaknesses in Russia's ability to defend critical infrastructure. Moscow has a massive territory to protect, and every additional Ukrainian strike forces difficult choices about where to place air defenses and security resources. Those pressures are now reaching Russia's energy sector. Ukrainian strikes against Russian refineries have reduced refining capacity and contributed to fuel shortages in some areas. Russian energy companies, including Rosneft, Gazprom Neft, and Lukoil, have reportedly sought additional gasoline supplies from India. That is a significant development because Russia has spent decades building its identity as an energy superpower. The country still exports enormous amounts of crude oil, but the war is creating a situation where Moscow has to export raw resources while importing some refined products needed at home. The economic pressure is extending into agriculture and shipping as well. Disruptions in the Black Sea are threatening Russian grain exports, adding another challenge for a country that has historically used food and energy as strategic tools. Inside Russia, there are also signs of growing anxiety among elites. Reports indicate some wealthy Russians are moving assets into cryptocurrency, gold, and foreign property because of concerns about economic uncertainty and government seizures. That matters because Putin's relationship with Russia's elite has long depended on an understanding that loyalty would protect their wealth. Recent nationalization efforts appear to be changing that equation. At the same time, Moscow continues expanding its hybrid operations against Ukraine and NATO partners. Polish authorities recently charged an individual accused of carrying out sabotage activities on behalf of Russian intelligence, including actions designed to inflame historical tensions between Poland and Ukraine. This fits a broader Russian strategy of exploiting existing social divisions rather than creating entirely new ones. Russia's cyber capabilities remain active as well. The GRU-linked Sandworm hacking group has shifted tactics, using fake CAPTCHA security checks to trick Ukrainian users into installing malware. Instead of protecting users, the fake security prompts became the doorway for Russian hackers to gain access to computers and collect information. And inside Russia, the Kremlin continues tightening political control. Former pro-Kremlin blogger Ilya Remeslo was arrested after turning against President Vladimir Putin and criticizing the war. Anti-war politician Boris Nadezhdin has also faced new restrictions ahead of elections. Thanks for listening. The headlines will keep coming, so we'll keep sorting signal from noise. Find the daily written brief at restrictedhandling.substack.com, and we'll be back with more tomorrow.